Milena is a parenting coach, and she's triple certified in conscious parenting by Dr. Shafali, who I'm a big fan of, uh, and trauma by Dr. Gabor Mate, the infamous, and spiritual psychology by Susie Lula. So a huge toolkit there. She's an ex-lawyer that moved away from the matrix to find her own consciousness when it comes to parenting, then discovered a whole new dimension in which to live, parent, work, and ultimately thrive. She's passionate to pass on the message of holistic parenting to other parents because she believes that everyone deserves to thrive, parent, and child. And to thrive, parent, and child, yes. I'm so excited about this conversation because I think it's such critically important work and education that's so needed in our society. So I'm really excited. And I read a quote from your website, which I loved, and I just have to share. You said your only role as a parent is to foster an empathetic, healthily regulated, individuated person and set them up for authenticity, and then your job is done. I think that's such a poignant message.
Yeah.
And for people who have no clue what conscious parenting is, what exactly is it, and how does it differentiate from kind of traditional parenting styles?
Yes. Thank you so much. So conscious parenting is still not mainstream. So it is a bit considered to be sort of wacky and different, and, just sort of bear with us because it is an esoteric, it's a concept, it's a philosophy, it's a way of living and existing, a sort of modus operandi. So people are very often like, well, I still don't get it. Like, what is it? Give me the top three. People want the kind of like the quick fix, what is it? So I'm going to do my very best right now and in this whole conversation to make it as tangible, but it is an intangible thing because it's an inner process. So conscious parenting is kind of, if you'd like, the opposite of traditional parenting. So take traditional parenting and reverse it on its head. That's conscious parenting. So for me, it's always the easiest to define traditional parenting because I think most of us, I would say almost every single one of us, was raised by parents. That doesn't mean that they weren't kind, they didn't love us, but they didn't know of anything other than traditional parenting. So the main concepts of traditional parenting is that there is a hierarchy. There is the parent, a bit like God, and I'm really sorry because I am quite provocative. I will make references, so I do apologize in advance, but it's kind of like, sorry, not sorry. I'm so passionate, so I'm going to make some references to make it more tangible. So you take God in a lot of religions and then you take everybody else, right? So it's a bit like that. I feel like traditional parenting was based on that method where we, the parent, are here and then the child is here, right? We know better. We are in charge. What we say goes, and the child should listen, obey, do as they're told, be in a certain way. And I think a lot of us were raised like that. So there is also the concept of like punishment, and I think we're going to talk about that, but it's sort of a lot of fear, a lot of control, a lot of anxiety, a lot of projections. And conscious parenting kind of takes all of that and reverses it on its head and says, wait, don't look to the child as a starting point. Look to the grown-up and the adult. So us, the parent, put the spotlight on us and let's have a look. Where did we come from? What are the belief systems? I always say, like, what are the concerts that are playing and what ticket have you bought? Are you in the front row? Are you in the back row? So kind of just checking who we are and why we are, how we are in every aspect of our life, because that's how we show up in front of the child. And then we start sort of decomposing, deconstructing, shedding, and kind of keeping what we like and change what we don't like. So it's about us, really, the parenting, conscious parenting, because leave the poor child alone, right? A 2-year-old doesn't know. Like I always say, with so much love and compassion, like their brain is the size of a pea, right? Like how can you expect them to be a mini adult? You're the grown up. You're the one that should have the skills and the compassion and the patience. So it's not easy, but conscious parenting is really about the parent.
Hmm. And I mean, the benefits then to the child, I mean, they must be tenfold.
Yeah. They are tremendous. And I think, with traditional parenting, you know, I get a lot of backlash. A lot of parents that come and see me, they're like, well, but you know, this works. These methods work. Punishments work. Rewards work. And I'm like, yes, they do. I agree with you. They really do. Because, you know, depending how good you are at your domination and at your sort of fear induction, your child will do as they're told. It's called the carrot and stick method, right? If you do this, then you'll get that reward. Or unless you do that, I'm going to take away, right? There's a lot of that happening in traditional parenting. So when you take that away, you kind of take all the pressure away. And initially it could look like it's a bit sort of chaotic and wacky and permissive, but that's not what it is, right? That's why for me, when I went into this and I tried attachment parenting, gentle parenting, I tried all these things that I could find that experts were telling me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not that gentle. I'm actually kind of an a-hole sometimes. I'm also super like not attached. Like sometimes I'm like, just leave me alone. I want to hide in the bathroom and not see you. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I be gentle and attached? And then I realized, well, wait, I'm just human, right? I'm all of it. Sometimes I'm kind, sometimes I'm unkind. Sometimes I'm relaxed, sometimes I'm super neurotic. And it's okay, right? We're these multifaceted, complex humans. And that's okay, right? It isn't about fixing us, but it is about raising the awareness and the consciousness. Like, oh, where am I? I always like to kind of compare it to taking your temperature. So take your inner temperature. How am I today? How have I slept? What have I eaten? Have I drank too much last night? You know, how am I in my, I don't know, personal relationships? How are my finances? You kind of look at your whole life, because all of that will translate in how you show up with everybody, but especially your child, because again, they are so little, and again, their brains are so small at times, and even when they're teenagers, it's not that much bigger. So it's so easy to get provoked by them, right? Easy to get provoked, right? So we're just like, rah, right? We exploded our children, and then we revert to what is familiar to us, which is traditional parenting. So yes, conscious parenting is not easy, and yet super easy, because it takes away all the rules and all the kind of domination and hierarchy and it has to be like this, it has to be like that. It doesn't, right? We see the child for who she or he is, that's in front of us, their quirks, their, you know, talents, their lacks, and that's okay, because that's the little human that they are. And that doesn't mean that we don't teach them things, that we don't show them the way, that we don't discipline. Quite on the contrary, like discipline is a huge thing in conscious parenting.
You're kind of breaking the conditioning of what it means to be a parent, and coming from more of that intuitive space and place keeps you a human. It keeps you humane. Just because you're a parent and you've had children doesn't mean that you then lose your humanness. Like you say, you're still going to have up days and down days, and that's okay.
Exactly.
That's, and it's important to check in with yourself in that respect.
Mm-hmm. And actually, if you were to apply the methods of conscious parenting to your other relationships, for example, my husband, he's been kind of resisting, like I'm going to stereotype for a second. He's a kind of stereotypical man, and like stereotypical men, he did resist this message. He was like, you know, what is this? I don't get it. And it took him quite a number of years. Then he came to one of my courses, which in of itself was a little bit strange. And then initially he was in shock. And then he said, oh my God, I've actually started applying the same strategies, the same skills that you're teaching to a parent with a child with people at work. And he's like, I've completely changed all my work relationships, how I show up. He's like, wow, thank you. And I'm like, okay, now you can apply it at home as well. But it's so true, because ultimately, and Dr. Shefali, I love this. She always says, we grown-ups are ultimately children walking around in ball gowns and tuxedos. We are all little children, right? Wanting to be seen, wanting to be heard, wanting to be loved, appreciated, celebrated, valued, accepted for who we are. So really, you think you're learning about how to be in relationship with your child, which you are, but you're also learning how to be in relationship with yourself and the whole world around you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I love about your approach. You're essentially learning how to parent the parent. You're parenting yourself, which is deep and very important work that all humans should undertake, whether parents or not parents. And yeah, it's so important for raising the future generation. And I wonder what are those kind of key things that you think are important for parents to do in their own healing, so that it will kind of profoundly impact their child?
Yeah, so I think, you know, Dr. Gabor Mate says this so beautifully. He says there's only two types of people: the ones that are traumatized, and then the ones that think they are not traumatized but are traumatized, right? We're all wounded. We're all little animals that are wounded and have, yeah, it's so true, because we often, you know, there's a lot of stigma and a lot of kind of um like a common approach to trauma. We think that, you know, it's something huge, something that happens out there, right? It's a war, it's a death of a parent. And whilst these are hugely traumatic events, like big T trauma, like trauma can happen at any time, at any level, with the most loving parents, right? We live in an unkind culture, in a toxic culture. There's so much happening to us and our children. So we really grew up, most of us, kind of ignoring, and my husband's term is shelving. He's like, I've always shelved everything and just get on with it, right? Like in England where I live, it's like grin and bear it. There's just so many conditionings and beliefs, and you know, we carry on for as long as we can until we no longer can, right? And then often this happens in our 40s and we call it midlife crisis, and then we try to buy a better car, upgrade the wife, you know, inject Botox and all of these things that we're cleverly all doing, right? Like, sure, go ahead, like, please don't think that I'm judging. Why not? Whatever rocks your boat. But the truth is, we bypass the real deep inner excavation, exfoliation, cleanse, and really healing, and then growth. And again, I keep referencing to Dr. Gabor Mate. There is so much wisdom in trauma. All the growth happens in the trauma. No one's ever really grown exponentially when great things happen to them, right? That's how we are wired as humans. We're kind of addicted to the suffering, and we do learn from the suffering. And it's something that's so inherently human and natural. And I always come back to the birth itself, right? Like, take a very standard, I don't like to use the word normal, but like a standard biological birth where a child comes through the birth canal. It's so painful. I mean, not that a child can tell us, but you know, we know it is so painful. Like, oh, right, they have to get all squishy and they get like spongy in their shoulder and our, right? It's so painful. And yet it is so natural, right? So part of the pain and the suffering is just part of our human journey. So if we could learn to kind of lean into it and find our way through it and understand that it is so natural, and it's a good part of our life. Good, again, it's not a good term, but it is necessary. It's what happens to us. So healing our own trauma and alchemizing it and turning it into wisdom is ultimately what brings us to ourselves. It brings us to our authentic self, to our purpose, to our calling. Very often our calling is in the trauma itself. I mean, it's just wonderful. And I think rather than numbing it, running away from it, whether it's drinking it away, you know, any kind of substance and addictions, or shopping or gossiping, or, you know, running. There's so many ways that we have tried to find ways out of our trauma. And again, running is great. It's amazing, but not if you're running away from the trauma, right? So I don't know if I've answered your question, but I think it's just so important to be brave and to be strong. And again, if you can, don't do it alone. Find your person, find somebody who can be there with you, who can hold you, who can mother you and love you and guide you, because it's not an easy process.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree. And it's kind of shining a light on that shadow or those darker parts just brings you into more wholeness. And then, of course, naturally, you're going to be able to show up better for your child, for your partner in life in general. And I love what you're saying about the challenges is how we grow, because, you know, raising children is one of the hardest jobs in the world. And you definitely need a lot of skills and energy for that. Um, but these skills were not taught. And I'm not just talking about practical skills like how to change a diaper and how to get your baby to latch, which is, you know, we focus a lot on it, the natural nipple, but it's emotional skills and the emotional education that's needed and missing for many parents' journey. And so in that process of being a parent, if you're feeling really, really kind of triggered and you're stressed and you're exhausted and you're worked and you're overworked and your child is crying, how do you advise showing up then as a relaxed, connected and curious parent for your children?
Yeah. That's such a great question, because that's the reality, right? We paint this rosy picture. I think it comes from movies, right? Where you're like, oh, you're in love, and then you have this baby and it's so beautiful. And part of it is, but there's a huge part that really isn't, right? It's not just ugly, it's painful, it's horrendous, it breaks you in every way, but then it can also make you, right? And I think, just to go back on what you said, parenting is the single-handedly most important thing we ever get to do in our lives. Not in terms of like, oh, it's better to be a parent than to be a heart surgeon. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it is the most crucial, because it's the backbone to life, right? We are literally raising the next generation. We are literally putting the hands of everything around us, be it from our environment to anything in the world, into the hands of our children. So it is a huge conundrum to me. And especially when I came to this as a lawyer, I was like, hold on a second. So we get qualifications, work experience, internships, courses, diplomas for every single job in the world except for parenting. I was like, this is insane. Like, literally not even one class in brain development, in trauma, in breath work, in negotiation, in skill building. Maybe, and I know that as a lawyer, because I used to deal with maritime law, so I used to deal with a lot of negotiations, and I did mediation and arbitration. I literally applied these skills when I had my two children, and I had to get them to sort of be in relationship with one another and not kill each other, which is what siblings do, right? That is so natural and normal. So I was trying to keep them alive in peace. I would use the skills that I learned as a lawyer, but it just got me thinking from the outset, this is insane. Like, why isn't there a manual? Why isn't there a course? Why isn't every parent shouting from the rooftop, guys, don't do it. But if you're going to do it, make sure you're kitted up. Like, you would never go climbing on Mount Kilimanjaro or anywhere in Mount Everest without having prepped for it. And yet we come to parenting with zero skills. Yeah. When I was coming into parenting, the only thing that was available here in London is something called an NCT class, which is a prenatal class, where with all due respect, and I loved it, but most of it was just about the birth and then how to breastfeed. So first of all, like, there's nothing you can teach about breastfeeding until you have that baby on your nipple, and I'm sure you know this very, very well. So, and then it was like, okay, and that's it. Okay, what if you don't deliver naturally? What if you can't breastfeed? And then that's it. Yeah. And I was like, okay, and now what? I feel like a failure. I don't know who I am. My body's changed. My inside has changed. So it's like, sorry, I've gone on a tangent, but I'm just so passionate that from the outset, we are in trauma, right? Because we don't know what we're doing. We're petrified. We're unskilled. We're unsupervised. We're unguided. And it's insane. This insanity continues on a day-to-day basis. So to say that. I'm here to change that and say we should make it compulsory. There should be a class from the age of 6 called parenting skills. So that when you come to a childbearing age, this isn't for me. Like, being a doctor isn't for me. I don't like to see blood. Or, maths, I'm not good at maths. Say, I'm not good at parenting. And I'm going to be really honest. Most of us parents are not good at it. Yeah. Understand? Because we weren't taught, we're unskilled, and we are completely wounded and traumatized. So back to your question, like, I think you asked me what are the main things that I would tell a parent. Was that the question? Yeah. Sorry, I'm passionate. I was like, I must say this. And I'm so sorry, I've got a bit of a cold. Okay, so the main things I would tell a new parent, right? If you have a baby in your belly now, right? Your child is in utero. I would say do the work now. People think, oh, it's not for me. I'm not a parent yet. No. Actually, do the work before you decide to be a parent. Do the work right now. Do the work if you're 15. Look within you, right? Start with this, with your home. What does it feel like to be me? And look at all aspects of you, your body, your soul, your mind, your relationships, your finances, your food intake, your sleep, your breath. Actually, the most important, start with the breath. I always start. How do you show up with yourself? Do you have an inner critic? What are the voices in your head? What happened to you? What's your story? Right? That's how I start when I start coaching and when I do my courses. I teach parenting courses. I start with the basics. Like, how are you? You know, even when you go to a doctor, like in this country, they've got 10 minutes. And really, I don't mean to be mean, because I know they only have 10 minutes. So it's like, right, what's the issue? Da, 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 da. It's very methodical. It isn't like, hi, how are you? Who are you? Right? What are you made of? But I think the most important thing as a parent is, please know that if you're struggling and you're suffering and you are in survival mode, there is nothing wrong with you. We live in a very toxic culture that doesn't support the parent. It is geared towards not supporting the parent, because then everybody benefits, right? And not to go into like some kind of crazy theories, but you know, there's billions and billions of dollar industries that benefit from all different things, including mental illnesses and all the struggles that we struggle with on a daily basis. And that's okay. But you see, you can change that. And even if it seems impossible, even if you say, look, I don't have the money to hire you as a coach, okay, then listen to the wisdom online. Download an Audible book that's £10. Go for a walk, look at trees instead of the news, right? You can do it, get one session where, you know, you say, look, I only have money for once. I have clients that save up for 3 months to come for a session. And, you know, the ego side of me is like, oh my God, I want to give it to you for free. But then I know that's not how it works. But I'm just so in awe of them that they will save up the money and they will come every 3 months and say, right, I've got an hour with you. This is the work I've done. Give it to me, right? And it's just so admirable. But unfortunately, it's on us, the parents. There is nobody coming to save you, to rescue you, to help you. You're going to have to take the reins and start being the driver in the driving seat, rather than being on the side or even in the back, or maybe you're in the booth, right? Wherever you are, come on, right? Grab it. It's yours to take. Start right now.
That's so powerful. I totally agree. I mean, the whole education system needs change, and I can see this in your future. Maybe that's going to be part of one of your future projects, is changing the entire system and writing a program that is literally taught from primary school, or at least, you know, at the hospital, in the birthing center, when you're leaving the hospital, when you're going home. I mean, it's so, yeah, it's so necessary. And I think when we don't have the same kind of structure of community, and kind of like grandparents that live close by, maybe, you know, friends also have kids and they don't have a lot of time, so that breakdown in community can make things really, really hard, not having anyone to lean on and talk to and get advice from. So yeah, there needs to be some kind of a solution put in place. And so when it comes to children, so we've covered a lot about parents, and when it comes to actually children, so how would you suggest somebody can encourage emotional intelligence in their child and help them develop a really strong sense of self and self-worth and of confidence?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because when we are very honest, if we were to shut the doors and like close our eyes and like a 3-year-old, I'm not here. And if you looked within, most of us lack. We lack in self-worth, in self-love, and that's why we don't look after ourselves. And that's why we then struggle with all the things we struggle. So starting from as early as you can and kind of fostering that in your child is so important. And again, you know, there should be a caveat to say that we aren't here to fix our children and to create this or that. You know, you could have a very introvert child, you know, or an adventurous child. You know, when I teach my courses, I get you to diagnose yourself and then you diagnose your child, because then you see who they are. But that doesn't mean that you can't teach them skills, but you still have to honor who it is they are. So say, for instance, your child was unskilled when it came to emotional intelligence, and it could be a variety of circumstances and reasons. For example, your child could be neurodivergent, right? Your child could just not be able to read emotional cues. That doesn't mean, you know, people really then focus on the label, right? We love labels nowadays. We're like, yes, I've got it. And whilst labels are helpful, they can also create, again, like a disconnect and a focus on that. So I think stripping all of that back and just saying, oh, so my child, I feel, lacks in emotional intelligence. Okay, again, let me look within. How am I emotionally intelligent? How do I show up? How do I model the behavior I want to see? And then you really start implementing that. A lot of parents come to me and say, my child is so rude, doesn't say thank you, doesn't say please. And I'm like, well, how often do you say thank you and please? Bless you. How often do you say that from a deep place of gratitude, as opposed to conditioning, a cultural conditioning? Again, in this culture that I live in, please, thank you, sorry, said 100 million times a day without really realizing what we're saying, right? Like, I used to find it very funny when I came to this country and someone would bump into you and the person that was bumped into would say sorry, and I was like, hey, what is going on? It's just so funny and interesting. So there's a lot of cultural thing, but I think true deep emotional intelligence and gratitude is something that is seen and then applied. So model it as a parent. If you feel that your child is not grateful, sit every weekend or every day if you can and write little gratitude notes. And they may resist it initially, but then you can write one to them and just say, I'm so grateful that I'm your mummy. I'm so grateful that I wake up and get to see your beautiful face, right? You start showing your child what they need. And then if they're really resisting and there is really something terribly wrong, then sure, go and ask for help, right? Find an amazing therapist, find a coach. You know, there's always a solution. Again, it's not about the fixing, but things can change and mold and shape actually very quickly.
Mm.
And the self-worth, sorry, I didn't answer that. Again, self-worth is something so deep and so inherent, and it has a lot to do with, you know, trauma and healing and at your attachment relationship with your child and how you show up for them. So it's kind of a complex question to answer, but again, looking at it holistically, it's something that can be achieved pretty quickly were you to apply kind of and raise your consciousness now. You pretty quickly.
Mm. It's so true, and I'm such a big fan of I think it's really important that adults learn how to self-regulate, like self-regulate our nervous systems. And it sounds like such a simple thing, but a lot of people don't. You know, they're very reactive, they're not in control of their emotions, and they don't know how to take that space and sit, and whether it's meditate, go for a walk, be in nature. And ultimately, you know, I was thinking when it comes to children, and I'd love your opinion on this, but you will need to co-regulate with your children so that you can almost them that skill until they're able to do it themselves. And so many
That's
don't.
well, we have no idea what we're doing, right? Like you say, we're just children ourselves. And then when you are with your child, then you become the child anyway, right? Because it's so easy. You look at them and you're like, ah, I want a tantrum, because you probably were never allowed to tantrum, right? So you missed it all. So I think of like, sorry to use again, stereotypically a man in a midlife crisis, he's doing all the things he wished he had done when he was 20. But in his 20s, he was busy pleasing his, I don't know, A-type controlling father, so he couldn't really do all the crazy things a 20-year-old is supposed to do. So we are the same in parenting, right? We see the child and they're dysregulated and they're unskilled and their brains are so little and they're, you know, overtired, overstimulated. Screens, that's a whole other conversation, how we are raising our children with screens and technology, and they're just completely lost, and so are we. And then we're just like, oh, we want to shake them and we want to kind of like sort them out. But the truth is, we don't even know what we're doing with ourselves, right? We use the same thing for ourselves. We overdrink, we overeat, we overwatch things, right, on Netflix, and we don't know how to regulate ourselves, let alone co-regulate with our child and really be there for them, so they know that they're safe and that they have options. And it's not just about being calm. And again, it took me like 30 odd years to find Dr. Gabor Mate to realize that it's not, I always thought it's just about the breath and, you know, breathe, Milena, and breathe. But it isn't, you know, sometimes it's about stomping your feet, screaming and saying, I hate this situation. You know, I don't want to be here. I mean, obviously not scream in front of your children, but, you know, go to your garden, shut yourself somewhere. He literally had to tell me this. And I was like, oh, I thought that meant you were, you know, but it's not. We need to get things out of the system, right? In whichever way that works in the moment or for you. So yes, I think go and learn the skills yourself so you can then teach your child how to have those skills of regulating emotions, making a conscious choice when it comes to anything really, right? That it comes from a place of wholeness.
I love the idea of locking myself in a cupboard and screaming.
It works really well.
Works, yeah. So when it comes to kind of aggression and discipline throughout the years, there can be a lot of kind of power struggles and defiance, and especially going into the teenage years. And how do you suggest handling discipline without kind of aggressive traditional punishment or, you know, naughty corner spanking, etc.?
Yeah, that's a big one. And I'm very passionate about this one because, you know, I was shocked. I had recently discussed this with a client of mine whose child was spanked by the father with whom my client is no longer in a relationship. And the child came home and said, you know, Daddy hurt my privates. So we were shocked, as I'm sure you are, right, to hear this. And then when we decomposed, we realized that it was just a spank. But obviously, the child wasn't raised that this was even a possibility. The child was raised, rightly so, that, you know, your privates are your privates, nobody's allowed to touch you and all these things, right? So you see, then I, as a lawyer, of course, I always immediately check the law. In this country where I live, in England, it is legal to spank your child. It is actually called and deemed discipline. If you, as the parent or carer, you don't even have to be the parent, you can be the primary carer, say a nanny that's in charge of the children. If you deem in this moment it to be the right thing to do, and the benchmark is as long as you don't leave a mark on your child, then it's considered to be valid discipline. You see, and we are in 2025. Isn't that insane?
Disgusting.
Right. See how much work is needed? It's like, oh my God, 24 hours in a day is not enough for me. So I was shocked and appalled that actually legally we can't say anything to the father because it's his right to actually, you know, pull down her pants and give her a smack. So we have a lot of work to do, right? And this is what's happening in this country. Imagine what's happening all over the world. So we need to be, I am very vocal about this and very passionate, because I think when we start our lives by being in confusion as to why somebody that cares for us, loves us, gives us a hot, warm meal, and cuddles us when our ear is achy, also can hurt our private parts, then boy, we are just confused.com, right? So no wonder we are needy, greedy, and self-medicating, and I don't know, smoking a bit too much of something, right? Like, we have to have so much compassion for that and say, yeah, we so need it, right? So when it comes to our children, we will have a tendency to want to do it, to want to yell, to want to scold, to want to punish, to want to hurt, because it was done to us, right? It is sort of wired within us. So it requires an undoing. It requires a healing and a retraining of our nervous system, so that when it comes to something, we are not, you know, we're not going to the go-to tool that was done to us. And the second option that I find with parents is they have been hurt so much that they go to the other extreme of being in this sort of panic that they're going to hurt their children. So they start being this wounded little animal that comes to their child wanting to be loved and seen. And so discipline is basically just permissiveness turned on its head, and kind of with begging to be loved and seen. So you see, the parent becomes the wounded child themselves because they're unhealed. So a true kind of approach to discipline for me is, I mean, you're just looking at the word etymologically, discipline, disciple from Latin, it means to teach. Wow. So a disciple is a student. And not that I'm, you know, a huge follower of religion, but, you know, why did Jesus have his disciples? Allegedly, he was very nice to them. So looking at ourselves, even like with our parents or in school with our teachers, who did we want to naturally follow? The one that shamed and scolded us, or the one that was curious and fun and sat on the table with us and taught us through connection, right? Of course, it was the latter. So it's the same with our children. We need to be connected. We are, you know, it's kind of overly said, but it's connection before correction. And I don't even agree with the correction. It's not about correction. It's teaching the skills. It's understanding and being curious. Hey, what's going on with you, buddy? And, you know, you can't really have that conversation with a 2-year-old when you're in the supermarket and they're screaming and they're on the floor and everybody's looking at you. But you can have the conversation with yourself. Right. You have that conversation. you kind of play the role of your 2-year-old and yourself. And yeah, watch the embarrassment of being looked at like you're the worst parent in the world. And then watch how the ego rises. The ego that wants to be seen as the perfect one. Because you see, we are so delusional as parents that we think that our child is an extension of us, that it's a reflection of who it is we are. Because we're in so much lack and scarcity that we get all our validation through our child. So you see, even going back to the very beginning of things, why we have a child. It's such an egoic and selfish and narcissistic thing, and we don't even know it, that we had this child to validate all these things for us. Anyway, I'm getting all philosophical, but I'm just so passionate. So when it comes to discipline, I would say connect with your child, understand that you're the teacher. You need to get into that mode of wearing the hat of a coach, of a teacher, of a mentor, of Jesus, whatever person you want to look up to, and say, I need to teach. What skill is my child lacking? You know, if it's a teenager rolling their eyes, am I really triggered by just an eye? Why am I triggered by one eye? You know, like get into a kind of fun discussion with yourself and let them slam the door. You'll get another door. Is it really that important? And then I go to a very big extreme with my clients, and I know this could be quite triggering to people. I myself have been through 2 wars. I come from a country that no longer exists called Yugoslavia. So when I was by the age of 9, I'd been through 2 wars. And I always say, look, guys, imagine you're in a war. And by the way, they're still there everywhere all over the world. Imagine you were in a war right now with your child and the whole house collapsed. Would you care about the bloody door? No, you wouldn't. You would care if your child's fine. So go to an extreme if you need to get into a place of compassion. And when you're in that place of compassion and connectivity, then attach to your child. See what's happening to your child. Get curious. And I always say, be the person that your child comes and runs towards to when they've messed up in life, rather than the person they think of, oh my God, I'm so afraid, what are they going to say? Make that choice now, and then remember that, right? Write it down on your fridge door. I get my clients to write it on their phone so that it rings every hour for a week, right? You need to kind of retrain yourself.
That's so beautiful. I mean, there's so much solitude and aggression and war in the world. Like, why do we want to even think about bringing that into the home? You know,
my theory is that, and this is completely, just my theory. Why do wars happen? It's basically just 2 toddlers having a meltdown and having a fight in a playground. It's the same thing. And then 2 unskilled parents coming in, I don't know, screaming at them or hitting them for doing it. And then, okay, now we're doing it with, I don't know, nuclear weapons and whatever we're doing. It's the same. You see, traditional paradigm. So why not break it? Why not say, hey, I'm stopping this toxic cycle. I'm no longer being part of this. And yes, my ego wants it, and I'm wired to want to dominate and tell my child they're a brat and that I could have never done it. Sure. I get all my clients to sit with their inner child and all their masks and egos before they can come to their true self and parent from that aligned inner adult self that is grounded like a tree, that is strong and curious. And if you don't know, it's okay. You say, I don't know, but I will go and find the answer, and until then, I'm going to be on my breath. That's it. Unless the house is burning down, there is no urgency. But you see, we have this fake, I always talk about the invisible tiger. I say to all my clients, like, where's the tiger? Look around. I know you think there's a tiger because you ran for years and years away from the tiger. But is there one? If not, it's okay. Take a breath.
Yeah. Such important work. It's so beautiful. And I think that feels like a really kind of beautiful place to close on. I would just love to finally ask, what resources are available to support parents on their conscious parenting journey? Obviously, people can go to your website, but yeah, if you have any other suggestions.
Yes. My website isn't even done because I'm just so busy walking my talk, and I have 2 young children. They're 7 and 8, so I am really practicing every day. I always say I am my best and worst client, and I'm a teacher and a student at the same time. So the resources, again, it really depends where you are on your journey, but so many people are very generous with the content they put online. I myself resisted so much social media and kind of I only started Instagram very recently, and I'm still not like in it completely. but I really understand that that is the way we communicate nowadays. So if you were to open your Instagram, you would find an array of amazing coaches and teachers and counselors that put themselves forward. You know, you've mentioned my three mentors and the people that I look to and am constantly in sort of work with, Dr. Shefali, Dr. Gabor Mate, Susie Lula, Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith. Her and him are sort of, you know, two peas in a pot. And then if you went to Dr. Shefali's website, you would find so many different coaches there. I'm there, and if you love the message that I've said, but you don't like my voice, my accent, my attitude, that's totally fine. I always say it's like dating, right? Go and date, right? Go and try out, find your person, but allowed to be held by somebody if you can afford it. On ask for a concession. Take a course. I teach courses, but again, my beautiful colleagues teach courses. Read books. Again, anything by Dr. Shefali. Again, Dr. Gabor Mate, Dr. Neufeld, they wrote an amazing book called Hold On to Your Kids, Why Parents Matter More Than Their Peers. Susie Lula wrote an amazing book called Motherhood Evolution and Why Thriving Mothers Raise Thriving Children. You know, so many beautiful, I'm going to put actually on my website loads of resources, podcasts, YouTube videos, anything that inspires you, and really meditation. Meditation is the way forward. Just sit with yourself on a cushion or whilst you're washing dishes. A lot of people say, well, I don't have the time. Okay. But, you know, wash your dishes and start meditating, start checking how you are within, and start treating yourself with love and kindness because you deserve it. So yes, I would definitely say try every day to do something nice for yourself. Listen to somebody who's inspirational. Do all the things that make you happy, however you can in your life, even if it's 5 minutes a day, it will change your life. And if you can get a coach, it will truly transform you completely and get you back home to yourself.
I think there's been so many incredible nuggets of wisdom in this Instagram live. So I'm going to drop a couple of the things that you mentioned to attach it to this, and you will also be linked so that anyone can find you that's watching this.
Yeah.
And yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed.
Thank you so much. I think we were going to say I will offer all your beautiful followers and listeners, if they put the code in, they can get a 45-minute free coaching session with me. I'm feeling very generous. I've had something horrible happen to me recently. One of my friends took her own life, and she probably was. She had postpartum depression, but it's just pushing me even harder now to talk about it and say, you know, please speak up. Say what you need to say. Don't sit in silence. Don't suffer. It is hard. It's not you. It could be you, but it's hard. So please let us be your village. One of the things I'm very passionate about, you know, people talk about, oh, it takes a village to raise a child, but where's the village? Where is the village, right? We're so isolated. We're in nuclear families. We're living this crazy, fast-paced, fast consumerism life. So let's slow it down. I'm loving all the hearts and hugs. Thank you, Jacqueline. So yes, please, yeah, if you tag me, and then, you know, people can just reach out and just take it from there.
Thank you so much for that beautiful gift for our listeners. Yeah, and this is it. This is the modern village. This is what we're, you know, while we're having these conversations and raising awareness together. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.